This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Sean Preston.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today, we have a lovely neighbor with us, and that is Jose Gingras of the Stride Clinic. What's going on, girl?
Hey, having a good morning. How are you?
The sun is shining. I can't complain. I think it's going to be roughly in the 16 degrees this week, and I get to work on my backyard, get the gardens going. I'm building raised garden beds this year, so that's all I was doing yesterday with my significant other, is mapping out where we're putting the gardens and what's going in it, and looking about companion plants and all this crazy stuff. So there's my geeking out for today's episode.
Love that, and hopefully the bunnies won't destroy your progress.
Yeah, I've got a Australian Shepherd and a little Chihuahua for that.
Okay. Yep, they'll do it.
Okay, so this is the first time we get an opportunity to meet, which is super exciting because of the curious cat I am. I would like to know, much like our listeners would as well, why don't we dive right into it and tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, so I operate the Stride clinics here in Barrie and in Aurelia. We are a foot and lower limb health clinic. So our main focus is always on getting people feeling better with every step, especially at this time of year. We all know how much we kind of get moving more, we get active, and all too often we see that vicious cycle where you get moving and then something comes up and then all of a sudden now you're stuck, you're not moving as much as you want to. So we like to try to prevent that cycle from happening or break it when it does. So we do things like custom made orthotics, which we hand make on site. We do footwear modifications, and we really place an emphasis on foot strengthening and being able to kind of connect more with your feet. A lot of the people we see, and formerly myself, we don't really know what our feet are doing when we step forward or whatever we're doing. So getting people to be able to actually feel their feet more, I've found has made an incredible difference with my clients. And it's so rewarding to see.
That's pretty interesting when you say, feel your feet. So like, what does that look like if I come in, I'm a client of yours now, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to feel your feet more. What does that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of it starts with texture. So some of us just aren't even capable of trying to feel our feet when we first start. So getting texture under the foot, even just in kind of a training session. So a lot of the times I'll get people, like when you're sitting watching TV at the end of the day or whatever, just put a tea towel under your foot and kind of manipulate that. You're not necessarily trying to do anything specifically, but you're trying to kind of, can I feel that bump there? Can I feel that transition in texture there? What happens if I push down with this toe? And getting curious about our feet. We do a lot of work with walking around with toe spacers, getting the foot to splay more. And it's pretty interesting how quickly we can make those early changes. And then from there, I find people just get interested and kind of take it and run with it.
That's pretty cool stuff. How did you get into like feet in general? Is that something you always kind of, when you're a kid, you're kind of just, hey, I got, look at my toes and I'm interested? Or like, how did that all come about? What was your journey like?
I'll admit to not having cared for my feet or cared about them at all for a while. I was a kinesiology student and serving in the summers to pay my way through, and ended up with a nasty case of plantar fasciitis, which I know a lot of people can relate to. That stabbing pain in the heel. You get out of bed and it's like, oh my goodness, just feels like a knife going through the heel. And I got a pair of orthotics and could not believe the difference they made, and was sold immediately. I was like, yes, I want to do this. And it doesn't always work that easily. I can attest. Sometimes it takes a lot of playing around with the orthotics, a lot of iterations. But eventually we do get there. And I found that, going back to that foot strengthening piece, encouraging people to find more about their feet makes the whole process of healing just so much faster. But there's just so much good that you can do with people through their feet. And I was sold immediately and haven't looked back since.
Well, yeah, I know from at least the chiropractor sessions I've been to, I was having like a lower back problem, and it ended up being my hips, which are also connected down to my feet. It's the way that you walk, and it just kind of, if you're doing it the wrong way or you're misaligned in way, it just kind of shoots up and it creates other problems from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the ground up makes such a big difference. There's always kind of hip down influences too, but yeah, like you said, the way our feet move and the ground interfaces can change everything going up to the back.
So like what goes into when you're like doing a custom orthotics for somebody? Do they stand on like a machine or like a gel pad, or like how does that work?
We are super old school. So we take, most of the time we're taking a foam impression of the foot. So we're sinking the person's foot into the foam box, or doing a weight bearing or semi-weight bearing cast, depending on what the needs of the foot are. Sometimes we are taking a mold by wrapping wax around the foot. Sometimes we're even going super old school and wrapping plaster around the foot to get the mold of the foot. But then we pour plaster into that mold, which creates a positive of the foot. And then we're heating up materials, vacuum pressing them around that mold, and then grinding and sanding them down to shape to eventually fit into the shoe and be what you wear day to day. So yeah, it's super old school. We're taking pressure maps, all that kind of stuff. We don't use any computers in our manufacturing. We've tried different styles in the past, but we just always come back to it by hand. It just seems to be the best outcome for us and for our patients.
There's a nostalgia of still crafting things with your hands. I almost feel like, as you're describing that, it brought me back to a memory when I was doing the molding clay, when you made that volcano when you were in like grade 7 or whatever.
Yeah. There's a
You get
different
flashbacks when you make that, or what?
Oh yes, absolutely. But there's totally a different level to like actually being able to feel things with your hands and knowing the textures that you're creating. The same way as you're talking about like when you're a kid sculpting that volcano, like when you're hand making an orthotic, like your hands are touching every part of that orthotic the whole way through, and you're feeling for that tiny little bump there. What's that going to do to the foot? How does that translate up to the hip, to the back? And then if we need to adjust the orthotic, like we know everything that went into the making of the orthotic, all the decisions that went into the process. So when we're rejigging our thoughts or our design, like we know what the past influences are, we know what works, what didn't work, all those things. So it just makes us better able to serve our clients. And then it ties back into that foot strengthening piece. The more they know what their feet are doing, the better they are able to give us feedback on how the orthotics are working for them. And then it becomes a beautiful symbiotic relationship where we're both just working together for their feet.
Yeah, that seems really cool to me. A pretty cool, like you said, a symbiotic kind of customer experience. You don't hear of that too much these days, which is pretty cool. Okay, so in your line of work, in your industry, in the foot business, let's call it, are there any like myths or misconceptions you get from people?
Oh yeah. A lot of people come in and they've tried orthotics in the past or whatever. And the first thing I'll let them know is that every single orthotic is made differently. Even if I'm making one person an orthotic and then making them another orthotic the next year, they're going to be a little bit different. Like we're making them by hand. So, and the foot changes over time too. So the mold we take isn't going to be the exact same year over year. And sometimes it needs to accommodate the new foot. So one pair of orthotics that's made by one person or by a lab or whoever designed or manufactured them, like every single decision that we make that goes into the orthotics makes a big difference in their outcomes. So one orthotic from a provider to another provider is so different. The other big thing that I hear is a lot of people think that you need to go up in shoe size to accommodate the orthotics. Sometimes that is the case, but rarely is it the case that I need to make the orthotic so thick or so bulky that you actually need to change your shoe size. I actually want the features of the shoe to fit the anatomy of your foot. So if you're going up in length to accommodate an orthotic, now the shoe's not going to be able to do what it's designed to do. So in general, I want the shoe to match the length of the foot so that it can serve the foot, and the orthotic and the foot can work and do different things together for the foot.
Yeah, I guess you would kind of think at a glance, like, maybe it would be thicker or it would push my foot up too high, but it's that custom made that it's for the most part designed to go in there so that everything fits. and that you also still get the full utility of the shoe the way it was designed in the first place.
That's right. And sometimes I do have to make a thicker orthotic, like if we're trying to accommodate bony prominences or something, or we need to do a ton of different layers and different densities, then yeah, but that's a conversation that we have. And every decision that we make is a decision we make together. I have no interest in telling you what you need and then just going from there. So yeah.
All right. So seems like you're pretty passionate about talking about feet and had a life-changing, you can feel free to disagree with me here, a life-changing moment in your life that kind of set you on this path. And I can tell by looking at you and by how the conversation's coming through that you're really passionate about it. So when you're not at work, when you're not talking about feet day in and day out, what do you like to do for fun?
My main hobbies are basically kind of just being outdoors. I love backcountry camping, canoeing. I have a 2.5-year Springer Spaniel that my partner and I enjoy hunting with. I love yoga, which I guess ties into the feet again, so I'm not getting away too far from that. But yeah, just being outdoors, being active, love that stuff.
Nice. I got into backcountry camping a couple of years ago, got the big pack. I've got a 3-year-old Australian Shepherd, so I took him out for the first time. He was an absolute natural. And there's a dog harness called Saker, Saker. And it's a company I backed before they actually made the product. It's the first time I've ever done that. And they made it's like the Yeti of dog harnesses, where they'll have just, the harness. It's also crash test rated, so it could be a harness used as a seatbelt for the car, but they have like extenders that you can put on, and then packs that they can carry, so the dog can bring their own gear, or you don't have to bring their own gear. And they got a little light that you can put on the front with all crazy reflectors and different colors and the whole bit. I highly recommend you take a look at that, because they believe that's their kind of their motto and their slogan is that you should be able to take your dog kind of anywhere. And it's pretty cool. Like at nighttime, you're just sitting by the fire. There's a red light because they see red, right? And then there's a regular light. So you can have the red light on if they're kind of just chilling by the fire, if you're backcountry camping, or if you want to turn it on and, they want to go sniff around, you can at least see where they are, and they get their own light. It's pretty cool thing.
Is that light waterproof?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely have to look into that, because the pack that we have for our little guy doesn't carry enough of his food as I would like, and our light wasn't waterproof, so the light died. So I will definitely look into those guys.
Yeah, very cool. Where do you go backcountry camping?
Temagami is my favorite haunt, but north and west Algonquin I quite like as well, and then I'm just starting to explore the Kawarthas now.
Yeah, Kawarthas is a pretty cool spot too.
Mm-hmm.
And everywhere just said, we live in a pretty cool spot, eh?
Oh, it's amazing.
There's loads of trails everywhere. Backcountry camping's so much fun because you can't bring everything you want, so you actually have to think about it.
Yep. You're locked in with what you got, so you better need it if you have it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's switch gears here a little bit. Sometimes we don't, we decide we're going to go on a certain path in life, and then life decides it wants to deal us a deck of cards or something different, or we get pulled or pushed in another direction. And so oftentimes as human beings, we'll, experience a challenge, a life challenge, or maybe a hardship. And what's always inspired me and what I've always thought in humans to be a really cool kind of component to all of this is the resilience that we have to be able to overcome some of these things, but more importantly, how we're able to, even if something tragic happens, find a silver lining through that as well, so that we can continue to push forward regardless of what life decides they want to throw at us. And so I'm curious to ask you if you've ever experienced a hardship or a life challenge that you overcame, and maybe a silver lining or two came from that.
Yeah, I'm still definitely in my early stages of my career, so I wouldn't say I've had too many kind of career hardships, but I am someone who is constantly focusing on growth, and working on making sure that I've got the right mindset to be able to deal with challenges. And I kind of take a stoic path in that, we're always going to be facing challenges no matter what. And it's just a matter of how we frame them, and everything is an opportunity to grow. And if we're not extracting a lesson from whatever we're doing, then we're certainly missing something, regardless of how hard those things might be. But yeah, I'm gonna say I'm pretty lucky in that I haven't had to face too many challenges yet, but I know they're coming, and just gonna be ready for them when they come. Go with what I can when I can.
Very good. Well said. I'll share with you. I had worked in the automotive industry for about 9 years, and then COVID hit, and so we used to help automotive dealers retain their clients. So we'd help do marketing to reach out with a special offer to be unique and invite their clients to come in for like a special 3-day sale type of deal. And when COVID hit, the big microchip plant in Taiwan got affected, which produces about 60% of the microchips in the world. 60% of those go to Apple, and then the automotive industry 20%, and the US gets them before Canada gets them. So I watched, what I built for 9 years, and I watched that kind of just crumble to the ground, like the company doesn't even exist anymore. So, you sink your heart and soul into 9 years worth of work, and then you come out on the other side with nothing to show for it. It's a pretty crappy feeling. And then having to kind of take your whole career, pivot in a different direction, and then build it all back up from scratch, which is why you did it in the first place. But being forced to have to do it all over again, it's different if you decide, okay, I'm going to make this decision to do it all over again, but being forced to have to do it all over, that was the biggest component. So, and take your income level from what it was to, absolutely nothing. And then the struggles to try to keep your house, the struggles to try to, keep your head screwed on right while you're going up there and meeting people and putting on a smile, when in reality, your life is in absolute shambles. It's pretty crazy. So that's a little something I had to deal with when the pandemic first started.
Did you find it challenging, getting to the point of being able to rethink what you were gonna do?
Yeah, I felt like I had blinders on. Like I don't have them anymore. It's been like probably 3 or 4 months that the blinders are not there. So what I mean by that is you're just so focused every day on like needing to get your life back on track that, things like cooking food, or, what I did on the weekend, just thinking about I wanted to plan my gardens, stuff like that. That didn't really exist for like 2 years, where you only have enough time to go out and focus on what you're doing. Like I didn't really think of my family too much. I'm just kind of, I got one goal and I'm only looking at that, because I didn't have the mental capacity to think about anything else. And when you don't have your finances in order, you have to borrow all the time and continue to do that. And you're just digging the hole, but you're in survival mode the whole time. So there's not really a whole lot of mental capacity for enjoying, other things. So, I would make, I spent money on playing hockey last year. And that was probably one of the only things I actually, spent money on, other than, watching shows like Netflix, because that's all really you could really afford to do. Couldn't afford to go to restaurants, couldn't afford to do a lot more than that. So that was the struggle I went through from COVID.
And did you find that there was like one thing that kind of released the blinders, or was it kind of a culmination?
Yeah, I think we built a business up to where, if, first couple months ago was the first month they didn't have to borrow anymore. So you're like, kind of take a breather and say, okay, like I'm over the hump now. Now we just need to continue to build, and then, slowly start paying that back. And then once that's paid, then you can start saving again and start making plans for what you want in life. So now I can actually start to think about like life goals again. And I want to buy a piece of land up north, and then I want to put a camper on it. And eventually I want to build, a cottage up there and stuff like that. Have a place to go fishing and start thinking about raising a family. Well, I can think about that now because I can afford to support that person down the line, when we want to have children and stuff like that. So it's pretty wild, a mental state that I had to endure. I think a lot of people had to go through that in COVID, but I had this little book I'll be honest, I didn't really write in it. It was a little diary. I'm not a big diary guy, but I came across it in the dollar store and it just said, trust the process. And so I just literally bought it for the front, and I stuck it in my TV room, and it would just be there. So anytime I'd go in there, just like, okay, yeah, you're having a bad day, you're having this, you're having that. Just stick to what you're doing, continue doing what you're doing, and you'll eventually make it on your other side. And next thing you know, we got the Good Neighbor podcast now. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. A lot to learn from that.
What's one thing that you wish our listeners knew about your business?
Probably that our goal is always to get you feeling better. Like, the idea of selling something to you is not what comes to mind when someone comes into my clinic. When someone comes in, my first goal is to sit down and understand what is ailing them, what is holding them back from doing what they want to do. And then from there, I take in the data and I talk to them and I figure out what's going on. And then my goal is to soothe whatever issues that they had and whatever is limiting them. And I don't have an agenda. My agenda is only to get you feeling better and to be able to understand your goals. We're always here to get people feeling better, and that's priority number one, always.
Isn't that the craziest thing, how some people think, right? You're going out to go get help, buy a product or a service because you need it, and still people have this stigma in their mind, like, I'm just going to get sold to. They're not there to help me. And I'm really glad you said that. That's literally one of the main reasons why we decided to do this show, is to allow people to see behind the curtain and get rid of these misconceptions, these misnomers that people have, or that they think, because we live in a pretty crazy world. A lot of it's only looking at the negative. We want to try to shine as much positive as we can out there. And here we go, right? The Stride Clinic, great business. They're there to help you. They're not there to take your money. Customer comes first, and a really cool symbiotic relationship. They make everything by hand, for crying out loud. Really cool conversation. Definitely there's going to be some people that are interested. And so those who are, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, best way would be to go to our website, thestrideclinic.com, or call us at either office. We also take emails at Barry or Aurelia at thestrideclinic.com, but our website is probably the easiest go-to.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming on and doing this. I thoroughly entertained, really cool talking about feet. I definitely learned some things, and looking forward to doing this down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you today, Sean.
Pleasure's all mine. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com, or call 705-413-3775.